Hi, and welcome to the Saturday Brunch podcast. Yes, today we have a bit of a name change. I have Colin D. Ellis on, coming to talk about his new book, Culture Fix. And because this is a different format to my normal interview items, Colin came up with the idea of a different name for it, which is fantastic, and really grateful for him to do that, and I like it. It also made me think that I should be releasing my Sunday lunch project on a Sunday. So now I'm going to be releasing that on the last Sunday of each month at noon GMT. So that's all going to change around a bit. Colin's book is really intriguing and really addresses a problem within organisations that a lot of us either allow the senior management to deal with and think we can't impact it, or actually we influence it massively without being aware that we are. So hopefully you're going to enjoy that, and I'll have a quick chat with you after I come back from the interview. Should be telling you it started recording.
It is.
Brilliant.
Nigel is recording your call.
Superb. So today I want to welcome Colin D. Ellis to the inaugural version of the Saturday Brunch episode. Colin, I've interviewed before, and Colin recently had the book, the project book out, which is a great book. Really loved the book. And Colin is a speaker, a trainer, a consultant, has a vast experience in project management, lives over in Australia, and is currently enjoying the sunshine, from what I understand. So, Colin, welcome. Obviously, today we're here to talk not about your background as we did last time, a bit of a different style, and obviously you've got the name for these interviews and created them for me, so thank you very much. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nigel.
So obviously we're here to talk about your upcoming book in October, The Culture Fix. And so first question I've got really is, why a book on culture?
Because, Nigel, when and I think I mentioned this on the last time we spoke, I was a permanent employee for 30 years. And what I wanted to do more than anything else was create this real kind of different team that people wanted to be part of. I recognized really early on, I guess as a younger manager, that actually when people are happy, they do their best work. And there's lots and lots been written about this, but it's pretty obvious, right? And yourself is when you feel part of something, when you feel like people have got your back, when you're working for an organization who you kind of understand their vision and their strategy, you're just generally happier, you're more productive, you can bring your whole self to work, all of that good stuff. And so, I wanted to do this, and there was never a book. I could never find a book in the good old early days. It was in the library. There was never a book that kind of articulated the way, how to do it. And so, when I found out that actually I was half decent at writing, I wrote about what I knew first, and project management was kind of what I'd been doing for 20 years. But a big part of that was building great project cultures, and then latterly great team cultures. And I was like, right, well, that's the book that I really want to write. And so I spent many years researching and capturing notes, and it's good to finally get it into print. And yeah, as you say, it's October the 1st, it's out.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So, I like the concept, by the way. I do like the concept of Saturday brunch. I like to think this, although the reality is probably different. There's people in the car on the way to the match. Like, that would have been me back in Liverpool going to see Everton with that sense of impending doom. And I'm like, how do I take my mind off it? Oh, I can listen to Nigel's podcast on the way.
Oh, well, if people are doing that, that's great. Because, so I think I'm going to, if I aim for sort of 10:30 to get it released on a Saturday morning, that sounds like it'd be a perfect time then, wouldn't it?
Perfect time. Best listened to after a couple of beers, just a couple of looseners before the game. Yeah.
Perfect. So before we go on anything, so as you said, you kindly sent me a sort of preview copy of the book, and I've Not read it all yet, but started reading it and finding it
What?
right. I've
Mate,
got
I
to get
sent you
through
that
this.
like 2 weeks ago. I
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
what have you
I'm
been doing if
I'm
not
I'm
reading my books?
I'm awful at not at sitting down and reading. Just making the time to do it. But I am finding it entertaining and useful, like the last book as well, which is fantastic. Fantastic book, the previous one. Um, so before we do it, what is culture? What do you call culture?
Well, it's a question I ask every time I do workshops, and the 2 day workshops that I do on culture, I give away how to do it. And that's always my first question. And people find it very hard to explain what it is. But culture is the sum of everyone within the culture, everyone's attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, traditions, and skills. Everybody. And what binds cultures together is all of those things and the stories we tell each other and we, kind of share about all of those things. But I think crucially, it belongs to everyone. I think there's this mistaken belief, Nigel, that culture belongs to senior managers, that it belongs to the CEO. Now, there are some senior managers that try to exert undue influence on culture. We call it command and control. You've probably heard that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Of course, it doesn't work. It's proven not to work. But cultures work best when the people within the culture, and great organizations are made up of subcultures. When we get these wrong, we call them silos. When we get them right, that's when you get this kind of great cohesion, this communication, this collaboration that everybody seeks. So yeah, it's the attitudes, beliefs, skills, behaviors and traditions of a team. That's what culture is. And only when you take the time to actually define it can you describe it. Just most people never do that.
All right. So if sorry, I'm getting my thoughts here. So why does it matter? Because as you say, you've got those command and control kind of people who can get the job done. And if the role of an organization get the job done, whatever the goal of the organization, generally to make money, isn't it, or make a change if it's or
Mm.
provide a service if it's sort of a government organization and sort of thing. Why does it
Yeah.
matter about uh, so why isn't it just that command and control? Why can't it just work? Why does it not work?
Oh, because everyone's got different styles, Nigel. Everybody is just slightly different. Everyone requires something different with regards to communication. I throw a lot of stones, and I like to use lots of humor. You'll be surprised to learn, from Liverpool, so I think I'm funny. At the fact that we buy quick fix solutions all of the time for culture, we go open plan, the thing proven not to enhance collaboration. We send everybody on a training course, the thing proven not to change people's mindsets. We choose to implement table tennis tables and then tell people that they're only allowed to play them on their lunch hour. We do process design projects rather than process removal projects. And so why it matters is when people are happy, when they co-create something that they want to be a part of, then you get better communication, which means you get more productive people. If you're in sales, you get increased sales, higher customer satisfaction, increased likelihood of kind of competitive achievement, reduction in absenteeism, reduction in attrition. You get greater ideas, greater innovation, and those things are reason enough to spend time and money on culture. And yet people are reticent to do it because we think that if we tell people what to do, then that will work. And you know what? It might have worked 30 years ago. My first job was working for NatWest Bank. And we had a bunch of command and control managers there who were just like, this is the way we do it, and you'll do it. And if you don't do it, you're out. And of course, back in the good old days, they could just get shut of people. That's not the way the world works now. We are looking for inclusive, diverse cultures that have purpose and vision. And Deloitte found this in the millennial survey that people want to feel connected to something. They still want to get paid well, but they want to feel connected to something. So culture matters now more than ever, Nigel.
And do you think that is and I've heard the phrase, and I think the tribe sort of mentality, and the
Mm.
fact is that we kind of had uh, in the good old days, as you say, we had limited numbers of tribes that we were part of. We had our family, we had our work tribe, and that was probably it. And that's kind of, you saw what you saw very much um, in your smaller group. And with the advent of the social media, and obviously the millennials are kind of, that's a given of that's what's there pretty much. They know it's there. It's not something unusual. They've kind of grown up with it. And that access to other cultures fundamentally, do you think that's changed the way that what people expect?
Well, I think what we've got now is way more sharing of information, and for the organisation, we now have Glassdoor. Glassdoor is I guess an organisation that collects information on how good cultures are, essentially, how well they work. So people have got access to that. You go onto LinkedIn, you go onto Twitter, you go onto Facebook groups. There's people sharing information about the great things that some of these great cultures do. And yet every culture, every workplace culture in the world could do it, but they just don't invest the time and money like others do. Now, here in Australia, we have an organisation called Atlassian, who are based in Sydney and also in San Francisco. They produce a tool called Jira, amongst other things. And they've got a great workplace culture, and everyone's talking about their great workplace culture. That's because Mike and Scott, the two owners, decided that if they wanted to attract the best talents, and talent is pretty thin on the ground all the way down here. That's not to say there isn't. There's some fantastic talent. But, we really have to attract people to come here because it is so far away. But they recognized that what they had to do was build and then maintain, a really great working culture, because that would attract great talent in this, kind of scarce market, particularly for tech people. And culture is the differentiator. People will go and work for less money in a great culture. Now, that's for the older generation who were motivated by money, not purpose. That sounds like, what? Why would they do that? Because they want to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think it was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi in his book Flow said, it seems clear that cultures differ from one another in terms of the degree of the pursuit of happiness they make possible. So organizations like Atlassian, Google, Apple, kind of all these tech companies, well, they make the pursuit of happiness possible, and people buy into that.
That's interesting. I've just picked up on something there that you say about that root of happiness, that reason for being kind of thing. And I don't know if you've heard the concept of the Japanese Ikiguy concept. And I've kind of been reading into that lately, around the fact you've got your passion, your mission, your vocation, and your profession. And all of those are a Venn diagram, and where they all meet, and you're doing what you love, you're doing what you're good at, you're doing what the world needs, and you're getting paid for it. You kind of get that sweet spot in the middle. And it sounds like that's maybe what people are looking for more, rather than getting paid well for what they're good at, being a professional, or getting paid for something that the world needs, that vocational feeling.
Well, that's right. And I think Ikiguy talks about, the kind of thing that you live for. And I guess the difference is often the job that you're in isn't the thing that you live for, but actually what keeps you there, what motivates you, what inspires you is the great thing that you do in the workplace culture. So, I might have mentioned this on the last podcast, Nigel, I had a massive career change at age 45. So, 5 years ago, and the first year was rubbish. No one wanted the bar of it. Because I felt like I wasn't doing the thing that I lived for, but that didn't stop me from trying to be part or create some amazing workplace culture wherever I went, and I'd like to think that myself and the teams that I worked with, we created some cultures that just naturally made us want to kind of come to work and do do the best that we can in order to achieve the success that we were after. And so whilst it might not have been the thing that we lived for, we created something that kind of just enabled success.
Cool. So looking at that, and looking at a couple of things, that kind of draws to one of the questions I was going to ask from the book, really, and I picked out there was, and you referenced it earlier, around you can have you're building project cultures, and obviously there's project management listenership to the podcast, and if you're in a command and control organization, but you're trying to carve out that different, better culture, and as you referenced, was it Derek Sivers, the TED Talk, where
Derek Sivers, yeah,
the lone nut
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
turns into a leader when they've got their first follower,
That's
and
right.
kind of is that kind of how you've been within some of those organisations that maybe didn't fit with the culture of what we're talking about, a good open culture
I,
as you talked about. How do you,
yeah.
were you the lone nut? Are you still the
Yeah,
lone
oh
nut?
yeah, still alone though. Still do some ridiculous things, but only because I've either read about them elsewhere, and I always give credit to people who've kind of had some of these ideas that I've borrowed or, just frankly stolen. You can take the boy out of Liverpool. And I was that lone nut. I remember taking one of my teams in New Zealand. We went out and painted our portraits on a Wednesday afternoon. It's a Wednesday afternoon or a Tuesday afternoon at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And my boss was like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "We're just going to paint each other's portraits." He was like, "What?" I was like, "We're going to go and paint each other's portraits." He was like, "Am I paying for that?" I was like, "No, we're paying for it." He was like, "But haven't you got the report to get done by Friday?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "But we see team happiness as being the most important thing. We've got a pretty rough end of week coming up." And so we went and did that. Another organization, we used to play rounders on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And every time you hit the ball, you had to come up with a new idea about how you could solve a particular issue. And so, I talk to business leaders and to, kind of project managers whenever I speak at conferences and talk about this opportunity that they've got to create just the most vibrant culture within whatever organization context they work. And it's an opportunity they should never miss. Because even though your organization might be command and control, is you can still create this little pocket of vibrancy that just naturally acts like a tractor beam and draws all of the best employees. We always used to judge the success of, kind of our vibrant culture based on how many people used to ask to join the team. And then, when we added them, we were like, okay, well, what are you going to contribute? What's something that you've done that you can add to the culture? And, that lone nut theory then spreads. And then, it starts with one person. And it wasn't always me, but it starts with one person. And then other people copy it. And then, you embrace those ideas. And then all of a sudden, you've got vibrant cultures all over the place, which is awesome.
Cool. You mentioned happiness there, and you mentioned it a couple of times, and I read it in the book about the fact that you're saying, right, people making your teams happy. And I suppose the challenge back to people immediately is going, yeah, well, I could be happy sat in the pub. Doesn't mean I'm going to actually get the work done. And it's kind of how do you go about making sure that um, you get that you get, as you say, you're going to paint each other's portrait or whatever. How do you make sure that you will have some individuals, I guess, who will just take the piss?
Yeah.
There goes my explicit, non-explicit tag. Um, uh, uh, so what do you do about that? How do you approach that, and how do you answer that question? I suppose when you're in your organisation saying, yeah, I need to make sure my team are fun, because having fun or whatever. Because I have another podcast that I listen to, Manager Tools, and where they talk about, and quite understandably, is that we don't always enjoy the work we're doing, and we can't always be
That's right.
happy at
Yeah.
work, and sometimes it isn't depending on the job you're doing, it isn't a happy job sometimes. But
Yeah.
how do you balance those sort of conflicts?
Well, most organizations never set the expectation around behavior. Often they'll, do some kind of BS branding exercise,
Hmm.
Nigel, where, the senior management team will go and have an away day and then come back and tell you what the culture is. And you're like, yeah, nah, that's not my culture. So I think what you've got to do, and, this is the work that I do 2 days with individual departments or individual big program teams. And you've got to define what your culture is. You've got to define a set of behaviors. You've got to define some principles of how you'll work together and a vision, kind of an aspirational statement of the future that you all buy in. Once you've done that, it's so easy to hold each other to account. And then often it doesn't come back to the leader of that team. So in that instance where I did that with my teams, they would hold each other to account. So I never used to get involved, and my team would be like, hey, that's not what we agreed. We agreed that we would be courageous. So sending an email at 4 o'clock to the CFO because you don't want to have the conversation is not the way that we agreed to behave. But without that agreed expectation, without that social contract, which is essentially, kind of what we draw up, and we, certainly the work that I do, we document that into a culture deck, which Netflix made famous in 2015. But that's your social contract between each other. And then if someone wants to behave kind of adverse to the social contract, then you can rightly say that's not what we agreed, and start to performance manage based on the culture that you've created. So, you've got to make a contribution not only to the skills and the work, you've got to smash your job out of the park, but you've also got to contribute to the culture. And for too long now, people have got away with murder, frankly, in the way that they've acted and behaved in workplace cultures. And we haven't been tough enough, and we need to get tougher. But that starts with defining just what we expect of each other in order for us to do it.
Yeah, I suppose that is a reflection now more on the study of the, in quotes, bullying in the workplace. In that, though, as you say, those behaviours where people have just kind of steamrolled, do what they want to do, and because they get results, that they're allowed to carry on doing that. And
but they get those results, Nigel, with just bodies strewn by the wayside.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've worked in a couple of those cultures myself, and one of my bosses tried to bully me. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? We're like seriously, what are you doing? And they were getting bullied by their boss, and their boss was getting bullied. It's partly that though, Nigel, but it's also partly some people just check out. They just want to come in at 9, leave at 5, and not contribute to the culture, like nothing at all. And then you'll get some people, some apologists who go, well, as long as I'm doing a good job, then that's enough, isn't it? It's like, no, it's not, because you're not contributing to the culture. You're not contributing to something that unique that we're trying to create here. Because only through everybody doing their bit for culture as well as their job can we create this general level of happiness. And I'm not talking about people skipping into work, you cartwheeling down the office corridors. I'm talking about people genuinely feeling like they're making a difference, kind of being rewarded and recognized for the behavior that they're being shown. So that collectively, everybody's contributing to team success.
Yeah, so it kind of drops that contentment, doesn't it, of the happiness side of it, of the fact that you feel part of something that's worthwhile, and you feel that you're recognized as being part of it as well.
Yeah, that's right. And so Atlassian talked about this a few weeks ago. One of the owners, it was the head of talent, I think it was, in the US, and said that we'll no longer tolerate brilliant jerks. And It's brilliant jerks that have held cultures back. And they're not just bullies. They're just, kind of other people. It's the extrovert that just won't shut up.
Yeah.
And I got taken into account for that. You'll be surprised to learn early in my career. And it was the best bit of advice that I got. My boss said to me, he's like, once in a while, you have to shut up and listen to other people. He's like, actually, I'll change that. It's more than once in a while. He's like, and I don't want to have this conversation again. And we never had to have that conversation again, but I learned a valuable lesson. And what he was trying to say to me is, your behavior is corrosive to culture. And I was working with a lot of software developers who just didn't want me bouncing around like Tigger. And I thought that was the right approach, and it wasn't, but I never stopped to ask them what was.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And I suppose, and again, that's the kind of unintentional sort of drain on it, isn't it? It's I guess and it's something that the project book sparked, and I mentioned to you about it, but about the different styles of project management that you talk about there in one of your chapters in that. And in a general point of view is that we will kind of think, well, everyone's like me, and well, let's just behave that way. But as you say, it depending on, I suppose, and again, drawing this to the project manager point of view, you step into a different organization, into a different project team, a different part of the organization, and you need to assess what project manager is in this culture. What do they need at that with their current view, right? Where do we want to get to? So what do we need to change? And maybe you need to influence the culture there, but it's kind of taking that thing of thinking, because it's not something I've thought about, is the culture to me has been what's in the organization, and I hadn't realized till you highlighted it really, is that we have that capability of creating or destroying a project culture on its own.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I've seen it happen so many times. I had to remove a program manager once from a really big piece of work in New Zealand because his behavior was holding us back. We were talking about this delays to the project, and we're going over time, we're going over budget. And when you get to the root cause, it was the behavior of the program manager. And then I was just like, how in the hell did I not see this? because I was being fed information, but I never once went round to the team and was like, "You good? Are you okay? How's everything going?" And yet, as soon as I did that, and this was kind of very early on in my, I guess, senior management career, is I didn't do the walking and talking. And, when you walk and you talk, you find out a lot about culture, that people generally won't come up and tell you normally. But it is a mix of personalities because remember, culture belongs to everybody. And this is why the open planners are nonsense. There's this assumption that everyone wants to work with the barriers down, and they definitely don't. And then people moan, it's like, oh, you walk through the office, it's deathly quiet and everyone's got headphones on. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're constraining them to this one work style, and they work best when they're in a quiet environment.
Yeah.
You give them a quiet environment, they won't put the headphones on,
Yeah, and I had a conversation the other day about I've been involved in lots of places that have hot desking, and when you've got people who are moving around a lot, they're in a different office every day anyway. Hot desking becomes it's just what happens. You don't think about it. I remember when I was working at Oracle and I was a consultant. So if I had a desk, great. If I didn't, it was a coffee shop. It was a cupboard, or literally one time we had a storage cupboard with some broken chairs in a factory type thing. And you kind of get used to that. But when you've got people who are based in the same office, based in the same role, every day in, day out, some people, and actually I've seen it, is that people end up going to the same desk. And even though it is a hot desk environment, people go to the same desks on the same day, and people by those desks go, oh, that's so-and-so's desk, when someone comes to sit there, or
Yeah,
they don't sit
yeah.
there themselves. And I've done the same. I've the office I'm working in at the moment, it's all hot desk. I was working in a team, and I'm still part of that team, but I'm kind of working in another area now. But I'll go back there once a week, and no one sits at the desk where I was, and I always go and sit at that same desk because we're kind of creatures of habit. And some people, that creature of habit thing that really, really cause them major problems if they aren't able to keep that habit. And
Yeah.
then that disrupts their ability to do great work, because they could be sitting there finding a desk, where have I got to do? Oh, here's my things that I need to do my job. I need to put out on the desk and organize that. And you lose productivity. They're not, therefore they don't feel comfortable. And it just, I think you're right. It's kind of, we need to lean to other, not assume that everyone's happy in that nomadic lifestyle, but also not assume that everyone's happy being tied to one desk. So you kind of got to balance the two, haven't you?
Well, you've got to balance the two, but when that happens, what we're doing is we're sending a cultural message that, hey, this open plan, this hot desking thing doesn't work for me. But we kind of lack the courage to talk about that stuff because the organization has invested in a quick fix solution that it thinks will increase collaboration, rather than doing its homework and finding out that it never has, improved collaboration, in the same way that Prince 2 never improved consistency of delivery and projects. And it's not that there's anything wrong with Open Plan. It's not that there's anything wrong with Prince 2. It's just that you can't have a one size fits all. Hot desking is great for me and my personality, Nigel, because I don't want to sit next to the same person. I work best in an open plan environment where there is lots of noise and there is lots of conversation. But I'm one of 4 general kind of personalities.
Yeah.
And there are other people who want to be in a cubicle. There are some people who want to be surrounded by family photos. There are some people who want to have a door that, closes in a private environment. And then there's everybody else. And so the sooner organizations realize that what we need is not open plan offices, not open plan environments, but kind of tailored personality environments, then you'll start seeing people, or getting the best out of everybody, because we create something where people can do their best work. And so you need collaboration spaces where people can come together around a whiteboard. You need social spaces where people can mix and mingle, and kind of share those stories outside of the work, if that's the right way to put it. You need those private spaces where you can close the door and have a more formal discussion. But ultimately, we all then need a space where we can do our best work, and that is not open plan.
Yeah, and I think that's a reflection of quite a few people demanding and requiring the remote working capability, because like I've got a little office at home here. The door closes. I've got a little quiet please sign. It's an absolute mess. It's an absolute mess. But if I really need to focus on something, when I work from home. This is where I would need to do it, because anywhere else when I'm in the office, it's for me, because I'm easily distracted. That means
Yeah.
that I'll get involved in a conversation. I'll find out what's going on, whereas I can sit here and get into it, like you say, that flow state, much easier sat at my desk at home.
Yeah, and flexible working, it's great that we organizations provide flexible working. And of course, the research will tell us that there's a cost saving, it's less stress because you're not sat in traffic. There are fewer distractions if you prefer a quiet environment, better health because you're not catching bugs on public transport.
Yeah,
And you get this thing called better balance. And yet the flip side to that is it's isolating
yeah,
for some people. There are many, many distractions, Nigel, and you just mentioned yourself. You're always on at home. So because you've got a little office setup, you never feel like you switch off. And it causes a big strain on kind of personal relationships at home too. You're
yeah.
speaking kind of from experience of all of those things. And so it has to be just one of the options you provide.
Yes,
You know?
choice is the key thing there, isn't it? Yeah,
It is absolutely its choice. And this is why culture is the sum of everybody. And so we have to ask everybody, where do you need to do your best work this week? You
yeah,
set the expectation
yeah,
about what needs to be done. And if it doesn't get done by the end of the week, then you have a conversation and you say, okay, well, why didn't the job get done? Because it's all about the performance, not where you sit,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I agree. I agree. So I'm just conscious of time, and I know that you've got a kind of hard deadline today. There's a couple of last quick questions, really, and I don't know. Yeah, I think if you were going to recommend that if someone bought the book and they could only read one section,
Mm.
which section would you recommend to read?
I'd recommend they read the section on cultures and subcultures. And the reason that I would recommend that is because we have this mistaken belief, and I mentioned this at the start, that there's one culture within an organization, and there's not.
Hmm.
And great organization cultures are made up of great subcultures. So that if they had to read one section, that would be the one. I'd like to think that I've written it in a way that they can come back to any of the sections, but that's the one that I would recommend.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, because at the beginning you said skip if you need to, didn't you?
Yeah, too right. Yeah.
So that's I think we're kind of timing out now. Is there anything, last things you'd want to say, why people should buy the book, and how is it available, where they can get hold of a copy?
So in the UK, in fact, everywhere in the world, you can get hold of it on Amazon. If you want a signed copy, you would have to come through my website, which is culturefix.xyz. Why should people buy the book? Well, if you want a blueprint of how to do something yourself, how to build great culture yourself, and I'm not a consultant. I didn't want to be a consultant. I'm a facilitator. I want to give away information on how to do it because for 30 years I was in the same position. I just wanted a book so I could have a crack myself and decide whether I needed someone to help me. So if you're looking to build good team culture, kind of department culture, organization culture, go out, grab the book, give it a crack, and see where you get to. And if you want to find out more about me and the speeches that I do or the programs I run, culturefix.xyz.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Colin. And
Thank you, mate.
I have a fantastic rest of the day. And I hope that Culture Fix is picked up and grabbed by everyone all over the place.
Thank you,
And I, and
Nigel.
I, and I
Always a
promise
pleasure.
I will finish it and prioritize
Yeah, get on with that. What else are you doing this weekend?
Exactly. All right, mate.
Cheers,
Thank
Nigel.
you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers now. Bye. And hi, and hope you enjoyed that interview. I know I did. So, as Colin said, the book's available. There will be a link in the show note for you to get it from Amazon or whatever, and to Colin's website. Hope you really enjoy it. And really, that's all from me. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye now. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, then please get in touch at sundaylunchpmpod@nigelcreaser.com. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye. Goodbye.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.